McLaren madness. Let's get into it. As we've already said, Max is out there laughing at McLaren's strategy calls. Norris and Piastri have swapped places. Max said, haha, just because he had a slow stop, which is kind of true. So what happened is this. Max Verstappen was leading, so he was pretty much gone. And they asked Lando Norris, they remember, it was like that 45, 46. It was very late. It was in the mid-40s that both McLaren decided to pit for softs because they were waiting for a safety car. So it was quite late in the day. And at this point, Oscar Piastri had taken what was a 5-second gap-ish from Lando Norris down to about 3. And then the McLaren pit crew came on the radio to Norris saying, do you want to pit first or second? Norris says, I don't really mind, but I don't want to be undercut. McLaren said, no, you're not being undercut. And at that point, he said, okay, Piastri can pit first then. Because maybe he was thinking, protecting from Leclerc, etc. He really wanted to finish third. Piastri pitted. He got like a 1.9 second pit stop. He left. In the next lap, Lando came in. So Piastri would have got sort of an undercut, but it was the fact that they couldn't get the tyres on properly. I mean, the tyre didn't go on properly. It was a lengthy stop, long enough that Piastri comfortably-ish came out ahead of Lando. Lando could clearly see him. Lando would have been in Piastri's mirrors, and then McLaren asked them to swap places. A lot of people are saying that's really bad. Now, if you go all the way back to Hungary last year, the same thing happened, albeit Lando was a bit less forthcoming with swapping their places, and McLaren had promised Lando, no, there's not going to be an undercut. So I kind of get it in a way, because it was towards the end of the race. And then they said to Piastri, you're allowed to race, but Lando had the pace. Part of me thinks, were McLaren worried that, knowing that Norris had a slight pace on Piastri, was there going to be a bit of argy-bargy? What they didn't want is one DNF McLaren as well, did they? But still, I'm in two minds really. Was it fair? If you think the Hungary thing was fair, which I criticised at the time as well, you got to think this was fair because it was a very similar scenario, to the point where when you play this,
but
Lando is getting booed on the podium.
That was a relentless pace today.
It certainly was. Lando Norris. Is that cheers or?
Yeah. Is that cheers? No, Crofty. I don't think it is. So clearly the Ferrari's still, fairly upset at it, which are kind of like, is a bit of a shame, if I'm honest. This is Andrea Stella interview on the team orders. Let's have a listen.
Andrea, can you talk us through those team orders to restore Lando to P2? Obviously, what happened last weekend wasn't his fault, but there was nothing you could do.
No.
Today it wasn't his fault, but
they're talking about the engine not being his fault. And today, to be fair to Lando, it wasn't his fault. And he also, as that McLaren have, the lead car decides when they want to pit. And Lando kind of gave that on purpose to help his teammate. And then he ends up behind his teammate. Through McLaren's problem, nothing that either Oscar or Norris did.
But there was something you could do.
Yeah, we can certainly talk through it. Let me first start by saying that the decision we made today doesn't have to do with what happened in the Netherlands.
And I think that's really important he says that. They're not, what he's trying to say, we're not trying to favour Lando suddenly because he's so many points behind Oscar Piastri. Good.
It's completely independent of the DNF that the team caused in the Netherlands for Lando, but this is a completely separate situation, and we take one race at a time. And today...
One thing I like about him is he's explaining it, and I think he's going to explain it really, really well and be very, very, very clear about it.
When we started the pit stop sequencing, we started the sequencing pitting Oscar first, but with a clear intent that we would have not swapped the positions.
Okay.
Unfortunately, this compounded with the fact that we had a slow pit stop, but because we had the sequence with Oscar first and then the slow pit stop, we thought that the fair thing to do was to go back to the positions that we had before the pit stop.
And at that point, I think I agree with him because it was Lando that decided that. Yeah. Now, had it not been Lando and it would have been more of a racing situation, they were clearly not racing each other at the time. Yes, Piastri was closing in, but at no point was he realistically going to get the DRS, and Lando gave up the advantage of pitting early to help Oscar. And at that point, I do think it's fair. from a moral point of view, yeah, from a racing point of view, you can be like, oh, that's really unfair for Oscar to give it up. But for me, I understand that.
I'm sure this is Oscar will be very comfortable with this. He already was comfortable during the race, so we should.
And other than obviously making, saying something over team radio at the end of the race and the interviews, Oscar didn't make it an issue. But then, yes, he is playing the team game. But as Lando did, sort of, all the way back in Hungary.
Show again the values, the principles that we have at McLaren.
Was mentioning Hungary last year to Oscar the best way to make sure he'd be happy with this?
Yeah, of course, like we have Hungary, but after Hungary we had so many conversations, so much alignment with each other as to how we go racing. So I don't think we need to go so far back. I think we just stick and refer to the principles and the approach that we have in the way we go racing. So yeah, no, I think it's
fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Stella that I think it is really fair. Let's see what Lando has to say, which I think is interesting. Let's get his opinion.
Going through your mind when you had that slow stop, because I imagine time stops.
Oh no, it's happening again.
And then obviously the decision from the team to ask.
Here we go.
Oscar
Here's
to
the
swap back.
slow stop.
Yeah, well, it's what we decided as a team beforehand.
I mean, look. Okay, before we get this is what happens. Look
Stops.
look
and then
here.
obviously the decision from the team to ask Oscar to swap back.
Look here, and what happens is the mechanic doesn't quite get it on. The other mechanic's like sort it out and gives him a couple of slaps. Look.
Yeah, well, it's what we decided as a team beforehand.
Do it!
If it was the other way around, we'd done exactly the same thing.
Is all I can say. Whoops.
Yeah, it's not how I want things to go. I don't make these things. I don't plan for
And I get it. What Lando's saying, he doesn't want things to go. He doesn't plan for these things.
these things. I don't want to win or be second or third or whatever like this. But it's the most fair thing. And if I was behind.
And to be fair, Lando, I think, is one of the most fairest and gentleman drivers. If you remember, after Hungary, it was a bit embarrassing for him. He's kind of throwing his toys out the pram. But then after Hungary, for example, the sprint win that Oscar gave him for Brazil, he paid it back in guitar. And that was his decision, not McLaren's. And remember that. When a lot of people are criticising Lando for this at the moment.
Was behind and Oscar had the same thing, I would have to give up my position because it's not my fault, it's not Oscar's fault. It was a team mistake, which happens every now and then, and that cost me. So, yes, I know it doesn't look the best thing. I don't want it. But it's the most fair in the end of the day for driver against driver, and that's how the team want to play it, and I think that's the most fair way.
Yeah.
So.
And I think he's right. It is the most fair thing. They're doing what is fair, and they had control of it. And I'm struggling to have too much of an issue with that. I know other people do. I kind of understand it in a way. And yeah, fair play for Lando. Fair play for Oscar Piastri as well.